All right, so today I wanted to show a couple of the upgrades I've made on this Woodland Mills sawmill I got. I've had it for about a year now. It's been like exactly a year. So I want to show a few things that I've done. There's three improvements, one major one. I've always had an issue turning really big logs over, because what I usually do is I cut the top waste wood off and then maybe get a board or two, and then I flip the whole thing over 180 and then I cut the next section. I don't just roll it that 90 degrees usually. I just find it, maybe, I don't know, that's how I do it. So, but even if you did have to roll it 90 degrees, you know that with a cant hook on these big logs, like this one that I have on the mill right now is 14 feet long, and it was about 18, 20 inch diameter. So those big logs, it's really hard to get over with a cant hook, and then sometimes putting it up against the log stops, like if you just rolled it 90 degrees, can be a real pain in the butt. And then you got the cant hook and you got your hip on it, and then you're trying to dog it to clamp it down, and you know, it's a real bitch. So I've tried a few different things, and I'll show you what they are, and they haven't worked. And then I've gotten my initial thought was what I ended up with in the end, but I didn't want to do everything that it took to get this done. But it wasn't that hard in the end, and it's working really well. I've done rolled 3 logs with this so far, and yeah, I think I got it dialed in. So I'll show you what that is. And it doesn't take any power. It's all manual, which is good for me because I don't have any power here. We're off grid, and I'm like 80 yards from my house. So I didn't want to hook up like a electric winch and stuff. I've seen those videos on the internet because I searched quite a bit to try to figure out an easier way to do this. And I think I came. The 3 things are that winch system I just went over to turn the log, and I'll show you that here. A toolbox, my take on the toolbox, which I haven't seen this before, works really well. I'll show you that in a second. And then a little table off the side on my mill right there. The other upgrade I made to the mill, and this was like early on, is I put this toolbox in here. Now you can buy a toolbox from Woodland Mills. It's a lot more expensive than this plastic one. This plastic one will probably last, well, I mean, it might crack or whatever, but it won't rust or anything like that. It's waterproof. There's a gasket all the way around, which I've proved because I used to have this mill outside. And I just took some L brackets and hung it from both sides, kitty corner from each other. So there's one in the back on that side and one in the front on this side, and then it rests on top of the hitch bar, okay? But it is below the deck of where the logs sit. So as long as you don't have a branch, that it won't hit. And it's way at the end, so rarely, you could actually, the blade stops like right here. So, it's working really well. I keep a socket set in there, some wrenches. I have a square to level out my log stops. I have some spare parts, clutch, some more log stops, cigars, lighter. I got my level. I got a 2 foot, not 2 foot, but a level in there to help level the deck if I ever was to take this somewhere and then forget my level. I have one in there to level the deck. The strap for the carriage when you leave. And then a book in there from when I take my breaks. Yeah, so I got pretty much everything you need in there. And it's worked awesome, and has never gotten in the way. The only bad thing is, like, you might have a big log and then you won't be able to open it. But normally logs aren't go that long, so it hasn't been a big deal. But that's worked really well. Then the other thing I made was this little table. So it's just a 2x4 slid in through there, and it's got a little piece of wood screwed in so it doesn't rotate. And then this block of wood is right below it, right on the side, like that. And then that holds a little table, and I put my tape measure there, and coffee once in a while. The only thing I do have to do is put a little lip on it, little like a 1/2-inch lip all the way around, because sometimes this rattles and will fall. So I just have to fix that, but it doesn't get in the way of my sight line or anything. And I've had that on there for a few months now. So that's worked really well. One idea I saw on YouTube, a guy had a jack like this, and he was putting it on the ground, and he had a hook of some sort on it, and he would crank the jack and it would turn logs. But that was in the woods, and I tried that, and I put a board across my mill down in this notch, and I would put that jack on it, and then I would put a stop, like screw a stop on that board so the jack couldn't slide. But all the jack was doing was lifting the log. It wasn't like lifting it and turning it. So it didn't work right. So then I came up with, I wanted a hand crank, because I'm off grid here. I don't have electricity out here. So I've seen them where people take like a winch and set it up, and I didn't want to screw with that with a battery and stuff. I wanted to be manual. So I got a boat winch crank, and I mounted it to this post. And my first idea was to put pulleys and everything up into the ceiling. And I'm like, you know what? Why do that when I could just take the cable over the top of the log, hook it, and then crank it? It should turn. Well, it doesn't, because it's actually pushing against these log stops. So it just moved the whole mill instead of rolling it. So then I did install the pulleys, and it's working so far pretty good. What I did was I went all the way to the rafters, and I hemmed and hawed about how I was going to do this. If I was going to put like 2x6s on edge above these bottom cords or whatever, and then like 2 spanning maybe 3 feet apart, spanning 3 trusses, and then I was going to put a board on top of those so it even out the weight across the whole truss. But these are only 2x6s, and they are red pine, and they have knots in them. So I knew there would be weak spots in them. So what I did instead was I put it above this, which is a 2x8 maple, and across 3 trusses. I took another maple 2-inch thick board and put it across 3 of those spanning, and then underneath that in this section I put another 2-inch thick maple board, and then screwed it on both sides, and then screwed it into that above maple board. And then I drilled a hole and put an eye bolt and put a 480-pound pulley on there, because that's the biggest one they had at Ace Hardware. And then I did the exact same thing over here. Put a eye bolt through this beam, and then there's actually a small clevis, or I forget what you call those, clevis, to go through the pulley. Same thing up there. So now I can crank, and I'm actually safer, at least I believe, because if anything pops off, it'll go like up. It won't go toward me like before that cable was going across. So far it's working good. Really easy to crank. I mean, turn that log, no problem. And I had my neighbor, he welded me this up, because I don't have a welder. So he welded me up a hook, and I just sharpened it a little bit more to a finer point to get in the wood easier. But I just pound that in and turn them logs, and it's way easier than the cant hook. So you saw what happened there, and I already knew not to do that. You got to wrap it all the way around into here to get this to flip over 180. And I only went to here. And I found that out the first time I cranked the log over, and I just did it again. But it was good to show because you saw that nothing happened, you know, nothing bad. It doesn't slingshot at you or anything like that. So, but like I said, the first time I did that, I went all the way around, hooked it here, and it gets to that point and it popped off. So all you got to do is hook it to here. All the cord, the cable goes all the way around, hooks to here to get this to be on the bottom. And the 3 times I've done it, it's worked every time. But like I say, it was good to show, and I'm not going to edit it out because nothing bad happened. And the same thing the last time, nothing bad happened, just pops off, and that's it. Try this, rolling this log one more time, and then hook it in the right spot. I want to take the wane off the bottom of this. So anyhow, let's try it out. There you go. Flawless. The other thing is, after you flip it, you need this part flush against these log stops. So if you, before I had this cable on the other side to flip the log, now if I reverse it, go around the other way, it'll tip it back. With a heavy log like this, you want to like grab the bottom, right? And you want to bring it over, but not have, kind of rotate this top that way and bring the whole log tight so it's flush. Well, it's really hard to do with the weight of the log. So I reversed this, and then it starts peeling the log the other way, and I can have total control because I can click it one time and you can see it move, and then I can just take the log and pull it, because it's easier to do that when it's not touching the log stop on the top end. So it's away from that log stop, and I can just grab the log. Now it's nice and flush. I don't know if anything of this makes sense unless you actually do it, but it's worked really well. And you can put just the amount of tension you want on that cable by just releasing the handle, taking the little lever off on these notches, and you can go one notch at a time, or click it, tighten it up, or loosen it one notch at a time, whatever you need to do. So hopefully that makes sense to somebody who's done this before and has struggled to turn the log and then get it flush on both the log stops. By using this thing, you pull that log away from the top, and there will be a gap on the bottom, and then you can slide the log, because the log slides pretty easily, even a big log like this, on these stainless steel caps that are on top of the bunks there. And then I'm able to pull the log against that log stop, dog that side with the clamp, and then come over here, and if there's still a space, you can reach underneath, grab that log, give it a tug, and it'll pull it up against that, and then you can dog this side. And it's much easier than doing it with a cant and like holding it with one hand as you're trying to, you know, jack it with your hip or whatever. Anyway, that's how I was doing it, but this seems to go much easier, and a one-man operation.